Hi, I am Pastor Ruth Winfield, and welcome to the season finale of the Deep Saints here on Wisdom Cafe. I am, of course, indeed excited because I'm getting to talk to those of you all who are mission minded, those of you all who God has spoken to. You believed His word, you moved on it. As a matter of fact, you set up to conquer. You are in pursuit. I came to tell you that God will never make you go it alone because He has already won the battle. Why? Because He has gone before you. That means that He's already given you the victory. He just needs you to show up. So here's what happens. God has many gifts in His arsenal that He used to bring the victory in our lives. Though there are many gifts, it's one spirit. And these gifts embody who He is. He has the fivefold ministry set up to equip the saints, to train them. The apostle, prophet, teacher, evangelist, pastor, to train, to equip the saints. And then there are so many other diversities of gifts, word of knowledge, word of wisdom, but all of the same spirit. And then what he does is he tells us, now forsake not the assembling of yourself together. In other words, when you gather and when you go to church, make sure you assemble. Now, of course, we gather, but the question is, are we assembled? Do we connect? Because when we connect, each joint supplies, and God can tap into whatever gift He needs to tap into to meet the need of the house. There is nothing lacking in the house because He has the gifts in the house. He has the tools in the arsenal. He can tap in and say, tag, you're it. You can be sitting in church and you can discern that the person next to you has a spirit of depression on them or they're not feeling well. You can sit in your pew and begin to intercede on their behalf that God would lift it up off of them and make them whole. Tag, you're it. I'm reminded of the word that God spoke to Abraham. He said this, He said, Abraham, I promise you that I'm going to give Canaan as an inheritance to the Israelites. You can bank on it. You can believe it. Why? Because when he could swear by no other, the Bible says he swore by himself. Why? Because nobody can do for you what God said He's going to do. God has to do it. God's going to show you He's doing it. He's going to work in you and through you to do it. So He told Abraham, Canaan will be the land of promise for the Israelites. So through many generations, the Israelites were not ready to receive their inheritance. They continued to walk in disobedience. So when you look in Judges chapter 4, they had been under a leader, King Jabin, who was the ruler over Canaan for over 20 years. He was cruel. He mistreated them. They weren't walking in their inheritance because they were disobedient. As a matter of fact, God willfully sold them under Jabin so that He could go ahead and do what it is He was doing to them because they chose not to be obedient. So they had enough. So they sought out a judge. Here come the plaintiffs, the Israelites, seeking out the judge, who is Deborah. And they say to Deborah, we've been facing cruelty for over 20 years. God has Deborah rule in their favor. Tag Deborah, you're it. Deborah goes to Barak, and Barak is tagged in. He has to get the military together because they're going to have to dismantle Jabin and his army to take over so that the Israelites will come from under that cruelty and perhaps be on a path to the word that God has promised to Abraham. So again, Barak is tagged. The instructions is, Barak, I need you to go down to Mount Tabor, take the military and set up camp there. I will send Sisera and position them so that God can deliver them into your hand. Now, Sisera was the commander of the army under Jabin. And so she sets it up. And once they get set up, they have to wait for the next instructions from God. God is so amazing. He will take your foot on the path that he needs you to go on to lead you to your victory and to your promise. And so what he does is he gives instructions to Deborah the prophet. She speaks to Barak. Barak said, hey, I'm not going to go unless you go with me. She says, okay, but I'll let you know that the honor of it will go to a woman. He was fine with that. But he knows that Deborah had the word. She had the gifting of the Spirit of God. She embodied who God is on earth for this moment to fulfill this task. So Barak goes and sets up at Mount Tabor. And then she sends Sisera to be positioned. And then when they're positioned, Barak is waiting for the next instructions from God. Remember, don't go it alone. You need to hear from God in order to move forward. If God isn't speaking, then you need to sit there. But if he has spoken, you need to move because timing and seizing the moment is important. But let me also say this. If he has spoken to you and you have not done what he said, he's not going to speak again till you obey the command that he's already spoken. And then once you obey that, he'll speak again. So he's speaking to Deborah, and Deborah is instructing Barak to lead the military in to conquer Sisera's army, who is under the leadership of Jabin, the one that is cruel. When they set up, Sisera sets up. God gives the next instruction, and he says, go now and go ahead and conquer them. What happens is Sisera, they begin to get in a panic mode. Why? Because God touched their mind and confused them. They didn't know what to do next. And then what happens is all of his men fall on the sword. All of them died. There wasn't a man left. Every one of them died by the sword. And when Sisera seen this, he jumped down off his horse and began to take off by foot. And how many of you know that God is not going to leave your enemy standing so it can rise its heads back up and come back in another way? No, God's going to make sure that your enemy is taken out completely. So it didn't matter where Sisera ran, he was going to be captured, annihilated, destroyed, and eliminated out of the equation. So he runs and he sees an ally, and her name is Jael. Jael is the woman that he fell in the hands of. But Jael is an ally she's an ally of Jabin. She's not an ally of Barak. She's an ally of Jabin. And so he comes in. She steers him into the tent. He says he's thirsty. She give him some skim milk and cover him up. He says, now go to the door. And if they ask you, am I here? You tell them no. But guess what? JL tag, you're it. I'm going to leave it right there. And I want you to go ahead and check out the cliffhanger. Here's the wisdom key. God has already gone before you. He's just waiting for you to show up. And when it comes to being victorious in your life, it doesn't matter who comes against you, because God's power always outweighs any opposition in your life. You will get the victory.